Woke Twitter employees have been caught red-handed conspiring to ban the libs of TikTok. We're going to read for ourselves the internal messages that have been leaked out for all to see. We're going to take a look at the latest reactions coming from the likes of Elon Musk, and stick with me at the very end of this video when I'll reveal what's really behind this effort to silence the libs of TikTok. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, Patriot, all across the globe. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you. As always, I am your Patriot professor, so if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. You know what else I want you to do? I want you to treat yourself to the best night of sleep ever, and you can do that by clicking on that link below and getting yourself the one and only MyPillow. That's right, Mike Lindell is a Patriot's Patriot. You know him, you love him, and he's now offering all of us the best sleep of our lives with their lowest prices ever with code Turley. So for example, the classic MyPillow is usually $69.98, but now if you use code Turley, you can get yours for just $19.98, and that applies to over 200 products in their catalog. So don't wait, gang. You owe it to yourself. Click on that link below. Get one for yourself. Get one for the Patriots in your life. Let's support our fellow Patriot Mike Lindell and get the best sleep of our lives in the process. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. We have a major development going on here with the extremely popular Twitter feed known as the Libs of TikTok. Now, if you don't know them, you should. They have over 1 million followers, and all they do, when all is said and done, all they do is repost what radical woke leftists post on their own TikTok accounts. Libs of TikTok doesn't make up anything. They don't write misleading editorials like the New York Times does. All they do is allow liberals, right, triggered woke leftists, to speak and act for themselves. And that feature alone has put the libs of TikTok in the crosshairs of the big tech overlords in Silicon Valley and the wider lamestream media. And that, of course, is because, as libs of TikTok proves every single day, the far left is no longer just wrong. They are utterly insane. They're flat out nuts. And libs of TikTok does a fine job of exposing that nuttery and thereby discredits liberals with their very own words and actions. And so the leftist oligarchs in Silicon Valley are cracking down. And the latest involves leaked internal discussions on the social media platform known as Slack. It was leaked by a Twitter employee who wishes to remain anonymous, and it shows Twitter employees bragging about banning President Trump and debating about permanently banning the Libs of TikTok account. Now, the reason put forward by these radical leftist employees at Twitter is that supposedly Libs of TikTok encourages violence against marginalized communities like LGBT. Now, keep that excuse and that accusation in mind because we're going to come back to that, all right? One Twitter employee wrote, quote, "Like, I don't get how this account, which exists solely to generate targeted violence at marginalized people, continues to be allowed to post." Another employee cautioned against banning the platform. Quote, "Well, but if we deplatform this account, we might erode trust in our platform from users who already think we're irredeemably biased against conservatives." Another countered, well, we successfully deplatformed Trump. I don't think deplatforming the libs of TikTok is going to cause a mass exodus, but I guess it may not be in our fiduciary interest to enact a ban on a high-profile account right now, the fiduciary interest being a reference to the potential buyout from Elon Musk. But other employees were shocked that anyone could be worrying about such trivialities such as fiduciary interest. Trans people were being targeted for genocidal violence during Pride Month, shouted one. Another employee responded and said, "I despise and despair the activity that's currently flourishing on our platform and empowering white supremacist fascists to act with impunity in conducting harmful emotional and physical violence on trans folks and the broader LGBTQ plus community." So obviously this is a fascinating behind the scenes of what's really going on at Twitter and the kind of employees that work at that corporation. The good news is that it's now out in the open for all to see. Elon Musk has chimed in, tweeting out, quote, "A platform cannot be considered inclusive or fair if it is biased against half the country." Amen to that. And again, stick me to the very end of this video and we're going to find out what's really going on with that. Tom Fitton tweeted out, quote, leaked internal messages show at Twitter dishonesty and bias on its Trump ban and other censorship. Will DOJ, SEC, Congress, FTC, state AGs investigate? And Elon Musk should also demand answers on this corruption scandal. So obviously this leak has some legs here. But bigger picture, we really have to ask, what the heck is going on here? What kind of worldview is infesting these woke radicals over at Twitter? And perhaps even more importantly, what can we do about it? First, gang, you probably have heard about the live premiere of my new movie in Lancaster, Pennsylvania this summer. I know not every one of you can come there in person. We're working on a virtual premiere that will be available later this year for patriots all across the world to see. We're working on making it accessible for everyone. But if you can't make it to the premiere in person, I'm doing a special training coming soon that you're not going to want to miss. Stay tuned for more information on how we can together fight the great globalist reset and win even in tough times. You're going to absolutely love it. All right, so what's really going on here with these left-wing radicals and their seeming addiction to banning dissenting voices? What we have to understand is that all of this rhetoric that we were just privy to is rooted in a concept that's widely known, of course, as social justice. Now, the term itself is rather anemic, okay? It's rather harmless. It goes back to the 1840s, and it was first used among Catholic social theorists to refer to a kind of virtue necessary for a post-agrarian, more urban, industrial society. So the term has rather humble beginnings. But over time, the concept of social justice eventually got co-opted by neo-Marxist intellectuals and redefined in accordance with something called repressive tolerance. Now, it's a very important term to remember, repressive tolerance. Repressive tolerance is a strategy developed by the radical cultural Marxist Herbert Marcuse in the 1960s. And its goal was to change American culture by tolerating every and all opinions and views espoused by minority groups, while at the same time excluding, or better, canceling anything conservative, anything indicative of the dominant ethno-cultural group or tradition. So repressive tolerance tolerates anything involving a cultural minority group on the one hand, and it represses anything involving the dominant cultural majority on the other. And repressive tolerance did two things over time. First, it set the stage where we could expand the notion of tolerance and, frankly, favoritism, right, to any minority group, even ones we invent, any group that the left considers socially disenfranchised. And then secondly, the key to beating the dominant cultural group is to silence them. That's the repressive tolerance strategy. So this, in short, is the origin of what we often refer to as woke cancel culture, right? Wokeness has two fundamental characteristics. It redefines the world as a divide between oppressor and oppressed. And secondly, it commits itself to silencing, literally canceling one side of that divide, the oppressor. And so what's so important here is to get that this oppression, this deliberate silencing, is now considered the greatest moral good. It is a moral imperative. Silence is compliance, right? Silence in the face of injustice is a tacit endorsement of that injustice. So this is the origin of that accusation these far leftists are making against Libs of TikTok. This accusation that the account is encouraging violence against marginalized community members. The way repressive tolerance works is that any critique, any disapproval or condemnation of so-called marginalized communities made by members of the dominant culture is by definition an act of oppression, because it is by definition an exercise of the dominant culture's privilege and exploitation. This is why the left is so prone to inflammatory and exaggerated over-the-top language, calling us fascists, white supremacists, who are encouraging violence, inciting murder and insurrection, and on and on and on. That kind of inflated language has to be used in order to justify the radical call to cancellation, right? Because we don't cancel moderate things. We cancel dangerous extremities. And so this is why any and all moderation in tone and in discourse is completely swept away by woke leftists. Now, the good news is that people have had it with this. Even leftist sympathizers are admitting that wokeism has absolutely no future. So take, for example, Bret Stephens over at the New York Times. Now, you are not going to find a more dedicated liberal globalist than Bret Stephens. And even he recognized that wokeism has no future. And for Stephens, and I think he's right, wokeism has no future precisely because it doesn't allow for any dissent. You're not allowed an alternative point of view from that of the woke left. And as Bret Stephens notes, the moment you've dedicated yourself to canceling any and all dissent, inevitably the canceled side becomes significantly bigger and more vibrant than the woke side. Wokeism inevitably cancels itself. There's really no way around that. And so all of that's to say that these Twitter employees are exemplifying what is in the end a dying worldview, an absurd woke radicalism that literally has no future. And no channel is doing more to guarantee their demise by highlighting their absurdities for all to see than the Libs of TikTok. So ironic that in trying to cancel that channel, the leftist activists at Twitter are just hastening their own demise. Now, before we go, you'll definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on Twitter surrendering to Elon Musk's demands, all as the legacy media prepares to implode. You're not going to want to miss this. So make sure to click on that link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.